Alright, that's too loud. Hey, what's up guys? My name is Cherno. I'm here in Sweden with
Peter. Hello.
my employee. So what better way to spend a beautiful sunset about 500 kilometers north of Stockholm than by answering your beautiful questions. So I put out a little Q&A on Instagram and YouTube just about Hazel, because Peter's primary job here at Studio Cherno is Hazel. He actually works on Hazel more than I do because I'm busy making videos like this one.
Yeah.
Okay, so I guess we can start with something that's kind of on topic to where we are at the moment. How's Sweden? I've heard that it's a great place. That's a stupid question. I was going to just answer the how's Sweden part of it, but then I'm like, it's a great place. What am I going to say? How's Sweden? Good. Okay, so in no particular order, I'm going to just browse through Instagram. Peter's got YouTube open as well with the questions, and we're just going to answer whatever questions we get.
Just gonna turn that sound off.
Yes. So this question, how do you guys keep everything organized, or you don't? I think that's a good question. Are you talking more about like the production side of things or the actual code? You know, how clean like the code is?
Because I think production-wise, it's like Jira helps a lot with that.
Yeah. So we use like a number of, I guess, organizational tools. I guess I kind of fulfill the role of development director / producer as well as technical director. So I lead kind of both the technical development of Hazel, but then obviously like we don't have a dedicated person. You usually have someone that's just in charge of running the show, making sure that everyone is kind of working together as a team. Rather than just like, you know, everyone doing their own stuff. Like work needs to be tracked some way, and there pretty much always has to be someone kind of in charge of leading the actual development so that we can deliver, you know, goals on time and fulfill kind of our targets. So that's kind of my job as well. I do a pretty bad job at that. I actually mentioned this in the video, which I guess I'll have linked up wherever, where I talked about like the tools that we use to, you know, manage Hazel. Yeah, I talked about how much of a bad job I'm doing at that, because it's difficult to not have like a dedicated person to kind of do that. But Jira helps a lot, definitely.
Yeah.
Being able to kind of, you know, use the, I guess, roadmap view and just see at a glance, like if we have a target like Hazel 2023.2, which is our next release, like what exactly needs to be done for that, who's working on what, and what are their expected like estimated time levels so that we can like make sure that we hit that, you know, on time, or at least at a certain time, which helps a lot.
Yeah.
What do you think, like in terms of code organization?
I mean, I think in terms of code, it's usually like pretty relaxed. It's like up to each and every one to kind of organize their code themselves. But then we have, you know, certain guidelines, like if you need to change code that isn't yours, you need to talk to the person who owns that code.
Yeah.
Which I think is really good.
Yeah, we have like a bit of a code etiquette guide on docs.hazelengine.com, which actually anyone can access.
Yeah. I think it's been, since we added that, it's been pretty good, I think.
Yeah.
What part of the engine do you feel requires the most amount of work / maintenance, either due to missing features or reworking existing ones like API redesigns?
You know what? I'm gonna say just the editor.
Yeah.
Like, we don't have an undo or redo system, even though like that is planned, but that's been planned for a while.
Yeah.
And it's just surprisingly one of those features that you don't really need as much as you think you need, but of course it's nice to have.
Yeah.
So in terms of like missing features, like, you know, because we've shipped like 3 games that we've made in game jams, and like they are, I guess, what you would call feature complete for a game.
Yeah.
Right, like they have a launcher with the graphic settings. That's where your journey kind of starts, and then like the game itself, like it's a 3D game with various kind of different tiers of graphics quality that you can set. It's got audio, it's got C# scripting for like gameplay and behavior. Like obviously we load a number of different assets, and it kind of looks and feels like a game.
Yeah.
You know, and we have asset packaging, and it's a multi-threaded runtime. Like, I feel like that's like kind of almost the base requirements for like, you know, can you ship a game with this game engine? Does it have all the features that would kind of make a game feel like a game? And I think we check pretty much all the boxes. But as far as developing that game goes, like, I feel like the editor is probably the longest list of features, you know? Because like games are so subjective as well. Like, what are you going to do? You're going to be like, oh yeah, well we don't have global illumination for graphics, but do you need that to make a game? Well, it depends what game you want to make.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I'd say for me, honestly, it's just the scripting engine, and that's mostly in terms of like redesigning, and also just like with all the games we've made, the scripting engine has really just been the system that's been the most troublesome, because it's always required some hacky workaround to get some very specific thing to work. And I'm gonna blame that partially on Mono, but it's also like, obviously on me, seeing as I wrote it. And I haven't been happy with it pretty much since I wrote it. So yeah, I'd say it's definitely scripting for me.
Yeah.
Although the editor is very kind of lacking of features, I guess.
What part of the Hazel engine has been the most fun to work on? You can go first.
Physics, easily. I love physics. It's incredible to work on.
I think physics is a good one because it's so deep.
Yeah.
I guess it's kind of like rendering in a way. Like rendering, like there's so many different techniques and so many different styles.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like physics. Like you think you've got it all, but then there's stuff like soft bodies,
Yeah.
or like buoyancy, or like material and cloth and stuff.
Yeah, definitely. And like physics is just so fun to me, partially because like that's the first thing I worked on in Hazel, and so it's like very close to my heart with that. But also it's just like you can keep working on physics pretty much forever, and you still won't get everything in, and things will constantly keep changing. And it's just, I think it's very much because it's like very visual. Like you make a tiny change and that can have a significant effect to what it looks like.
Yeah.
And I think that's just really interesting.
I think physics is more. I think most people will probably agree with me. It's probably more important than rendering, because you need some rendering.
Yeah.
But the thing is, like, physics really makes a game feel like a game.
Yeah.
If you can have really simplistic graphics, but if you just add like some physics and balls like rolling around and colliding and like destruction and all of this other stuff, like it immediately makes it feel like so much better. And not to mention that, like, you need physics because stuff has to collide into other things. And, even something like, the first Mario game, what is that, Super Mario Brothers? Was that what it's called? Like that game is so simple, but like, of course there's physics everywhere, like with how Mario moves and accelerates and jumps and like how high he jumps and like hitting blocks and stuff. Like, it's so important. And also physics is, I think, the only engine system that I have had zero part in.
Yeah.
Because like with scripting, I wrote the first kind of scripting thing. I had C# scripts working, and then you came along and actually made that into like a extensible, usable system that we could have.
Yeah.
But with physics, like we had zero physics in Hazel when you just came in, and that was your first real contact with me.
Yeah.
And you were just like, hey, here's I added 3D physics to Hazel using NVIDIA PhysX. Like, here it is.
Yeah, and of course the initial implementation was garbage, but it became
Well,
better.
It's better than zero.
Yeah.
Better not having anything. Yeah. So that's an important kind of.
Yeah.
That's a very important development milestone in Hazel's history.
Definitely. And I think it's interesting because when you look at a lot of like popular games, like not even AAA games, but just indie games, a lot of them are just effectively glorified physics simulations. Like you have BeamNG Drive, which is literally just crash physics. Teardown is, artistically, graphically, I should say, simple. Although there's a lot of tough
they
techniques
do really
there.
cool like voxel GI and
Definitely.
Yeah.
But like in terms of the overall art style, it's obviously not like a Call of
it doesn't
Duty
have a
style.
huge like art asset
Exactly.
budget and scope. Yeah.
And like the reason why that's a good game is just because there's the whole destruction of the environment and all of that kind of physics interactions is just so much fun to play with.
Yeah.
All right, let's just do a simple one. Will Hazel have any kind of JavaScript support in it?
If we do expand a little bit on the topic of what languages like Hazel support, like C#, it really begins and ends with C#. Like, I have zero plans to add anything else. Like, C++ is kind of just works out of the box because if you have Hazel, you have access, obviously, to Hazel's, like, source code, which is written in C++. So it's very, very easy for you to just come in and add a C++ function that you can then call from C# if you want to write code in C++.
Yeah.
And of course, because you have all the engine systems there, if you want to modify or extend an existing engine system, you can also really easily do that. You can add your own kind of components to the game engine from within C++ and do whatever workload you kind of want there and tie it to C# however you want.
Yeah.
So I think that kind of C++ and C#, that kind of synergy that those languages have, I really like personally.
Yeah.
And I think that that's like, when we eventually move on to developing an actual game, like I truly believe that's all we need in terms of like the tools to make game scripting happen. It's just going to be C++ and C#, mix and match, like whatever makes the most sense, and you're kind of done. Like, I don't think you need visual scripting. I don't think you need like some weirdo custom scripting language.
Tedious script.
Yeah. I don't think you need any of that. Like, C# is a very established, very elegant, very popular language that most people agree is just a really good language.
Yeah, and I think that there's just very little need for more than one scripting language in any engine, really. It's like,
I think it just bloats it.
Yeah.
Like, it just makes things inconsistent, and like, what do you choose? It's like if you have a huge menu to choose from at a restaurant. Like, honestly, I hate that. It's like, what do you pick? I'm staying in all these hotels in Sweden which just have buffet breakfast, and I'm like, the heck, this sucks. I'm gonna eat like 10 times as much as I usually would. I want to try everything.
Yeah.
Just give me a meal on a plate and I'm good to go.
I think C# is a really good choice for a scripting language because it has really well established interop with C++.
I don't know. I think that like the primary reason why because I did consider JavaScript very briefly. I considered Lua, Python, and JavaScript.
Yeah.
And C#. And I ended up with C# because I knew that eventually I would want to make like a decently large scoped game in Hazel. And I asked myself like, okay, if I have to write something complicated, like, 10,000 plus lines of code, let's just say, probably more like 20, 30,000 lines of code, like, and we, a full-on game, like, would I want to do that in Lua? And it was like, no.
Yeah.
Like, would I want to do this in Python? Like, I mean, you could, but, like, it's dynamically typed, it's, like, it just feels, it's slower as well, like, that's a consideration.
Yeah.
Like, JavaScript, like, I'm not as used to it, and, like, of course you can write complex stuff in JavaScript, but, at the end of the day, like, it comes down to being a personal decision as well. And it was like, okay, well, C#, very fast, really good library, it's a C-like language, right? It's strongly typed, like, it kind of just checks all the boxes, really.
Yeah. And, like, of course you can write slow C# code, but, I think with C#, it's harder to write really slow code than it is to write fast code. Because usually where like the performance bottlenecks come from is when you try to simplify the code by using effectively syntax sugar.
Yeah.
Like using the link libraries and using those kinds of functions. They're slow. Like, yeah, sure, they're easy to read sometimes, but you're gonna lose a lot of performance with it. And so you might as well just not use them.
Alright, next question. What is the main motive for starting Hazel? If I recall correctly, you were at EA back then. Was it some kind of escape? That's a good question. Like, I think the motive behind Hazel, like, that probably should be its own video, really. Because I think that, surprisingly, it goes as far back as my childhood. Like, not specifically game engines, but the fact that, like, I would always kind of, whatever I saw someone else kind of do, or whatever I guess, especially media related that I saw, I really wanted to be able to do that myself. Whether it was like make a movie, make games, like, there would very quickly come a time when I'd be consuming media and I would really want to stop and start creating media.
Yeah.
Right? And so, like, I think, because I was also kind of into technical stuff and I liked math, and it kind of naturally fell into place that, like, yeah, I like media and I like movies and stuff, but, it's almost like a game is like a movie plus math. It's like a movie with some interaction. And so that really drew me in, and then of course I wanted to do it kind of myself and from scratch, and how do you make a game from scratch? Like, well, you could just make the game from scratch, but these days, because the games are so complex, you have to build tools that enable you to make those games, and those tools are called game engines. And so I think that's why, really as far back as I can remember, I guess that path was almost just present, it would eventually fall into that path.
Yeah.
And then it was just only a matter of time. Like, I got a job obviously working. I didn't apply at EA to work on game engines. Like, that's not how that happened. I thought I was going to be on a game team. But then the studio technical director saw my resume and pulled me onto his team, and he was in charge of the game engine. And so that was great because I liked game engines more than games anyway. But that's kind of how that happened. And then eventually I was like, this is too complicated. Like, Frostbite is too big. I have too small of a part in this. Like, I want to make my own thing. And so I left, and that's the motivation behind Hazel. It was purely, I guess, looking at my life and being like, what do I want to do with my life? What do I like doing? Like, who cares about the money? Like, what do I want to do? I want to make a game engine. And then I think after that, it was obviously working out, well, can I make a living off of this?
Yeah.
Can I support my family? And, it worked out.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the motivation, the journey.
Yeah. Now you're sitting in a field in the middle of nowhere.
Did not see this one coming. This is actually Peter's fault. If he never wrote that physics engine, I wouldn't be here.
You know what? I can't argue with that. Is Hazel a good way for a beginner to make some games?
Yes and no. I think that it's simplicity. Like, the problem at the moment with Hazel, I think, is the educational content surrounding how it can be used.
Yeah.
Like, we have some plans for the future, and we really would like to make Hazel more publicly accessible and, just an actual kind of platform and a tool that you can use to build games. And I think when that rolls around, we'll have more content, in the form of like tutorials and stuff that would teach you how to use it, and that's obviously very important. But I think that if that were to exist, then I feel like it would be better for a beginner to use it because Hazel works really well out of the box. Like, you don't need to tweak graphic settings to make your shadows look good. Yeah? You don't need to wait an hour for packages to what packages do you want to use for this? Or do you want to use this render pipeline or that? No, you just open Hazel. It opens in, I don't know, a few seconds. Right, especially if you use shader packs in the editor, by the way, which we don't. That's why we're used to slightly longer load times.
Yeah.
But anyway, it opens in a few seconds. You've already got a new project. You can just make a new scene instantly. You just start making a game. You can hit play. Hitting play is like that. Everything's just so blazingly fast. And partly that's because it's so simple. And I guess the thing is, if you're a beginner, well, you want simple, right?
Yeah.
You're not going to get into every single deep feature. And so... I guess I honestly strongly believe that Hazel would be an amazing place for a beginner to kind of start making games because it's going to... I feel like there's going to be less frustrations, less kind of just waiting for stuff or not knowing which button to press, because if you've only got... It's like the restaurant menu thing. If you've only got 5 buttons to press, you can't really stray too far, you know? But if you're in such a complex engine... then what are you going to do? In Unreal Engine accidentally stumble into cinematic tools and suddenly you're making the Mandalorian.
Yeah.
So...
Spent about a week on the animation system, just trying to learn how to do the simplest animations.
Yeah, there are serious benefits to simplicity.
Yeah.
So much stuff these days is complicated and people think that they want the engine with the most features, but if at the end of the day, I feel like for most games that people want to make, you really don't need as much as you think, and that limitation almost forces you to be more creative. Hey, here's something that I actually want to mention. Yeah, so I have a 19-month-old daughter, so I'm of course into babies now. Maybe I'll cut that part. And one of the things that I read recently is that babies have higher quality playtime if you give them less toys. So if you put them into a little play area and you give them less toys, the babies that get that, they have higher quality playtime, meaning that with those few toys, they use them in more ways. And the end result is they actually play for longer. They stay in that play area without crying and wanting to get back to their parents and wanting attention. They stay there for longer. So less toys, higher quality playtime, more different ways those toys are used in, and they actually end up spending more time there than if they had more toys to choose from, because that's almost counterintuitive. You think that, like, if you give them more toys, well, they'll just slowly progress from one to the other, but no. So that's really, really fascinating, and I'll try and link that paper or wherever article I read, like below, in case anyone's interested. But like that, I think that's fascinating, and like I feel like, you know, there's a real benefit to limiting yourself, because it's almost like it forces you to be more of a human and use your imagination, and kind of, you know, like people say, less is more.
Yeah.
So that's like, maybe that should be our slogan, Hazel, less is more.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I guess, like, in a way it makes sense with the whole, like, toy thing, because the fact that they have less toys, I feel like, would encourage them to be more creative in how they use them.
Yeah. I didn't have that many toys as a kid. Like, maybe as a baby I did, I don't remember. But like, I remember like very clearly that like I would never get toys, like new toys just like that. Like, it would usually be for my birthday or like for Christmas. And so like, I still remember there was a single moment when I came home from school. I was probably like 10, and there was just a new toy on my bed, and that was so memorable, because stuff like that never happened. And I feel like that really forced me to be more creative, to use my imagination more and pretend I was doing that, or I was this, or whatever. Because like, you know, when you kind of have less, like, I don't know, like, that's also why I guess spoiling kids is a bad idea. And I knew so many more people. No, I'm probably gonna cut this tangent, but yeah. So yeah, like, it's super interesting.
Yeah.
I think another interesting thing, an interesting thought is like, I mean, what makes a game engine unique? You know, like, it's kind of like when people make games, why is this game different from another game? Because people love asking the question of like, oh, but why are you making a game engine? Like, how is it different to something else?
Yeah.
And it's like, well, you could also ask that about a game, right? Like, why are you making a game? How is this game different? Like, oh, you're making a first-person shooter? How is it different to like Call of Duty or Counter-Strike or Battlefield or, you know, whatever, right? Like, and I feel like most people there would be like, oh, well, it's art though. Like, the art has been made from scratch.
Yeah.
Yeah? But like, our code and our UI and all of that stuff has been made from scratch.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like, oh, well, you use Jolt, you're using existing stuff. Yeah, well, you used a game engine to make a game.
Yeah.
You know, like, I don't really think that there's really a difference. And I mean, that could go into a different video, which is like, why are we making a game engine?
Yeah.
But
yeah,
I like to make a video like that annually, basically.
Yeah.
Because
yeah, I've seen a few of those.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, like, for me, like, I wanted to make game engines because I, first of all, wanted to make games. Realized, actually, I find the core technology more interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to learn more about that. And now it's just become more of a... Honestly, like, for me, making a game engine is part of making some kind of art. Because even though it's not like a game or traditional art, it's still a very creative process.
Yeah.
And
No,
so,
it is.
You know, to me, it's like asking, okay, well, why are you making this painting when Leonardo da Vinci already made the Mona Lisa?
Yeah, I think that like it's very creative on a technical level.
Yeah.
You know, like some people like visual art, and obviously like they just painting, like photography, that's like their medium. But then a lot of people, they also really like, you know, math and like technical stuff and code and programming. And so it's like, I feel like making a game engine is really cool because it's like, it's a platform that you're making that is just a whole bunch of whatever technology you can really think of jammed into one package.
Yeah.
You know, and that's a really cool way for someone who, you know, wants to be creative but on a technical level to, you know, express that creativity.
Yeah. And like, I've never been good at traditional art, like painting or graphic design or anything like that. And so for me, it's fun because I get to be creative, but I get to be creative in a very kind of specific space that's more technical and logical than, you know, traditional art.
Yeah. All right, we might wrap it up there. Thank you guys for your questions. We might do another one of these in the future, although maybe not together because I'm leaving tomorrow.
Yeah.
But thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to hit the like button. Patreon.com/Cherno is where you can get access to Hazel. And yeah, thanks for your support. I'll see you later. You want to do the outro form thing?
I can do it, yeah.
Yep.
I guess, yeah. Bye.